So in this episode of the things that we don't talk about in church, we're going to really break down the entire conversation about managing expectations. It could be your marriage, it could be work, just be life in general. So Michael, let's jump into this conversation pretty quickly. We were talking about it yesterday on the phone a little bit. You sent me this, basically you do these like really long thought out text messages. They're really, really good. Tons of value. A lot of it's just kind of like what you're thinking on, kind of like what's on your heart, and really what you're looking into the Word about a little bit that's just applicable to your life that day or that week. And it's funny because it almost always relates to like kind of what I'm going through. And so very Holy Spirit type of thing. But you know, if one person's going through it, most likely a lot of other people are going through it. And, I would categorize this as kind of doing life together, even though we live pretty far away from each other. So first off, man, how's the week going for you?
Week's going good. We're just opening stores up down here and getting ready for some exciting stuff, heading north into Georgia, and just from a work standpoint. And as you and I were discussing, expectations, I was having a discussion with my wife who was going through some stuff at work, and it's hard sometimes when you've been in the field, Darrell, it'd be like, if I was coming to you, talking to you about your job, and I've been doing it for 2 years and you've been doing it for 20, it'd be hard for you not to interject and have this expectation of why can't you get this? And so I fall victim to that tremendously when it comes to Nina and watching her go through things in her job or in her profession, where, I have this expectation of, oh, this is easy, but, if it's her first time seeing it, I have this unrealistic expectation. So, expectations shape perception. So my perception a lot of times is you're doing it wrong, when in reality, it's the first time she's doing it. So how could she be doing it wrong if it's a learning process? So it's been a fun week. I mean, and for the love of God, we're only in Wednesday. So I was thinking about that, and I was like, holy cow, man, it's only Wednesday. I got 2 more days of this.
Yeah, no, I can relate, like a lot of things personally, that I've kind of shared with you, financially, goals, different things that's just kind of rolling. It's a super unique time, at least for me, kind of on just expectations. And, it was really timely. And, I'm going to throw this in there. I think when it goes to expectations, how to manage it. And, obviously like your marriage, it's something that's the first thing you brought up, right? Because it's so relatable. There's tons of things we could talk about, marriage and work, managing expectations. I'm going to start a little bit different. Maybe about managing expectations for yourself, right? That when you're just, so I'll say this, I'm not a big like Enneagram type of guy, but I do rank a 3. And from, being ranked a 3, it's basically like you're just goal oriented, right? And you're high efficiency, nonstop. That makes sense to me. Like I struggle sleeping sometimes just because like my brain's just going nonstop. And so managing expectations for yourself, like especially work, life, personal life, finances, I think. And, it's something we've talked about in like other episodes, especially for me. And you've jumped in with some like sage wisdom, right? Because you've been there, done that. But like when it comes to having like financial goals, right? And expectations with your money on how you can save it. And, I've almost kind of changed like my thinking, and honestly, like faith belief a little bit in terms of don't get so far ahead of yourself and like look 6, 12 months. Like in business and career and stuff, obviously you have to make those goals, but I've just always found it, man, that like when I look too far ahead, especially like with my money, and like
That's
my
good.
savings and like what we're spending weekly or monthly, but like I've got these big goals, right? And then the enemy just comes in and just kicks you right between the legs, man. And like next thing you know, like that huge amount that you'd saved up and like you're purposing for something, could be a house, could be a big purchase, whatever. And then you don't have it because, you know, you have to pay the stupid tax because you did some debt or did something at some point or just something really unexpected came up. Managing expectations for myself financially. You know, because like that, I mean, like that works all the way into marriage and connects all the other different categories and areas
Yeah.
that I'm sure you want to dive into. But I just know with myself personally, man, I just get so far down the line, and I try to stay like like day to day type of thing. But like, man, I mean, like, have you ever experienced like that where like you're saving, you're doing this, you've got this big purchase that like you and your wife, your family's like really looking forward to, and then out of nowhere, man, I mean, just something happens. Again, it could be some stupid tax. It could be something you owe, but you're trying to put it off. And that's something that we've talked about, you know, off the air a good bit, at least from my position. But like, how relatable is that to you? Maybe like when you're financially saving for something and then just something crazy pops up.
No, that's good, and your story that you shared yesterday was so was crazy, and you know we've all gone through those moments. I mean, you know, I'm 20 plus years into a marriage where, you know, the expectation as a you know young married person is for me. Now I'm not speaking for everybody. Darrell, was the expectation was, man, let's just get by. Let's get through this moment. And then as you start getting older and you start having kids and all these things happen, and Darrell, you're such a great example of it, of that ambition to you know, want to have that financial security, you know, and that expectation comes from there. I think it's important that, you know, when I read about, you know, managing the expectations, it requires an emotional intelligence, Darrell, to where we understand, or I have to understand my wife's perspective of things and the motivations and concerns, you know, so I can help, you know, tailor the expectations in the way that she feels, you know, as well too, because it's no longer me. It's no longer just a single entity. It's you know, it becomes a unit thing. And so, you know, when my expectations of financial security don't line up with Nina's expectations, and you know, problems occur. And for me, obviously, you know, it's such a, I mean, it's such a clear answer of that is, you know, we have that lack of communication, you know, because I have this route that I want to go, where, you know, next weekend is next Monday is the tax deadline. And so I was telling Nels, like, you know, and I wait till the last minute. So we were talking about it last night, and I have this expectation now because I do our taxes is going, man, here's where I need to be. Bam. Here's the beeline. And then she has a different expectation of, you know, and she's like, she starts talking about an extension, and I'm like, man, we ain't doing that. You know, I don't want to think about this for another 3 or 4 months. I want to get it done and move on. So, you know, having that communication and being able to ask the questions doesn't necessarily mean that we lower the standards or avoid ambition, you know, because I want to have more. And I think a lot of times, you know, I'm not a greedy person. My wife is so low maintenance. It's unbelievable. I'm extremely blessed man to have a low maintenance wife who is very conscious of things she purchases and things she does. And you know, a lot of times I lower that standard of that, and you know, instead of creating a clear and honest, realistic understanding of outcomes between my wife and I. So it's the communication over 20 plus years has gotten tremendously better, Darrell, to where I understand what her expectations are. So it helps me create a better outline. And, you know, from a relationship standpoint, and I know you and I mean, yesterday we went from, we talked about business and Christianity, and we talked about what it meant to be in the relationship of expectations. And I think that's a great segment that you brought forward of going, hey, for yourself and for me to manage my expectations to be successful is to understand that my goals and expectations definitely, for the most part, are not Nina's goals and expectations. And so if I'm creating it in a single unit and a single entity, I'm going to fail in that relationship if I don't have that communication line open. So I think it's so vitally important that the expectation is communicate. And when that communication is at a high level, and as a man, I can put aside myself, that self entity of, you know what, I'm going to be right. And Darren, you know what I'm talking about. I mean, a lot of times I have this expectation of, man, what I'm about to tell her is the greatest thing on earth. She's going to love this.
She doesn't.
She's going to love this idea. She's going to love the idea. She's going to back it. She's going to be all in, and I'm going to walk away from this, the king and chancellor, baby. I'm the man. And then how it rarely does that happen. And then that expectation for myself is like, well, crap, and then I let devil get a hold of me. And then he starts speaking to us, doesn't he, Darrell? I mean, he starts telling us things that we think I think it's my wife telling me these things of going, man, you're not worthy of a conversation with her. You're not worthy to lead this family. You're a failure. You don't, man, how can you do this right? And then, once you fail, it's like, man, how can you lead her? How dare you pray for your wife? That, man, you had such a high expectation, and man, you've floundered that, Michael. So obviously, you can't lead your spouse. Obviously, you can't pray for your spouse. Obviously, you don't need to go. How many times that expectation on Sunday morning I get up, it's going to be a great day. There's times where, dude, I mean, we're arguing up to the point we get out of the car at church, and then we're going to go in and pose that, everything's great in this family. So I mean, because why is that, Darrell? Because the expectation is I don't want anybody to see my failures. I don't want anybody to see my flaws. I don't want anybody to see my weakness. And that comes through not just a relationship with my wife, but like mine and your relationship. And my expectations for myself when I'm having a relationship with another man, and we're trying to be spiritually intimate, is going. I have to develop that authenticity to where I can speak those things to Darrell. Darrell doesn't judge me, so that I don't have this unrealistic expectation that I want Darrell to be honest with me. I don't want to have this expectation that Darrell is the greatest thing that since sliced bread. And that comes through relationship, just like a marriage does, Darrell. I mean, you and I've walked through fire together, and we've walked through difficult conversations, and and look, we speak off camera a lot differently than we do speak on camera. And, so if somebody sees us, I don't want you to think we're posing. We just don't have that. Darrell and I have that relationship. We have that banner to where it's not, we don't take it offensively. We take it as, man, this is being real. And, and that's the only way that we can speak into each other's life and have that I have an expectation of Darrell that when he tells me something, he's telling me the whole thing. And he's not leaving anything out, and I hope Darrell has that same expectation of me, to where we're authentic with each other, so that we can help speak into that. And that helps me with my relationship with my wife. When I go, if I can't be real with her like I am with Darrell, what kind of relationship do I have, with Nina? So, I have to be able to trust her like I trust a Darrell, or I trust a Cowboy, or the other guys in my life when certain situations come up.
So let's transition to let's just say the career professional field, because this is a level of leadership. I mean, I've even found myself at different seasons, even with the nonprofit humanitarian ministry I'm with now. I mean, it's great. I mean, like my team's growing quite a bit. But as the team grows, I mean, the reason why the team is growing and you're having to hire more people is because there's more work and the ministry's grown, right? And so I have found myself recently, Michael, not being able to push out bigger projects, bigger edits, bigger, just huge projects in terms of video work, right? To where like my efficiency level isn't exactly where I want. So, I've always been the type of leader. I mean, I've been a director for about pushing 5.5 years. And so, man, I mean, up until the past couple months, I've been able to almost call my shot and like deliver quicker. And my shot was quick. And now I'm having to try to figure out my expectations on when I give timelines versus when someone makes one for me. Like there's, if you have good leadership above you, there's a lot of flexibility and like, I do. So like, that's great. But like, I'm calling my shot recently. And as things, just pile on and, you're trying to make some hires, but, you're working your way through trying to do the actual recruitment cycle, the HR cycle of it. So it's not like the work is going to slow down. You still got to get the work done. Right. And then you've got your personal life. I mean, like I got 2 little kids. One is really sick right now. And so it's, not getting a lot of sleep, working late at night, still having to pick projects back up early in the morning. And so speak into professionalism in terms of leadership and managing expectations.
I sent you something earlier in the week, and I was talking about, when I was going through, I was like, man, what are some of the pitfalls of expectation management? And I'm just going to kind of go over these. So if you see me looking off, the first one was over promising and under delivering. And, our jobs are so different, but we manage a business. You have to manage it. You manage a timeline so much differently than I do, and you do it so incredibly well. When you tell me all the stuff you're doing, and I mean, a lot of times I'll nod like I understand completely what you're talking about, and I have no clue. But I'm always leave the conversation very, very impressed of how you're managing that timeline. And then all of a sudden, we'll have a conversation like we had yesterday, where that timeline seemed incredibly stressed, and I could feel it. So, I mean, over-promising and under-delivering is a major pitfall, a common issue that's, particularly in a client relationship where professionals commit to unrealistic outcomes, to win favor and they only fail to deliver. So, that's one of the pitfalls that we have. Another one is assumptions instead of communication. Failing to explicitly state expectations often lead to misunderstandings. I find that as well too, whether it's in business or a relationship. If a question's asked, or if I have an expectation of an employee or a manager in my business, and then it doesn't happen, a lot of times I'll be annoyed by that failure to not happen. But in reality, I have to ask myself, why did that not happen? And then the common conclusion is, I did not have a conversation with them. Whether I expected them to know what that outcome was, I didn't have the conversation and go, hey, do you understand explicitly what the job responsibility is for this? So, not having those assumptions. The third one was a lack of clarity or consistency. That's when goals or standards are vague. Okay, which we just refer to that, are frequently changing. It becomes impossible, to meet or manage expectations effectively. So the clarity in your expectations with the people that you work with or the people that work for you, will drastically diminish the pitfalls of managing those expectations. And then the last one I had was avoiding difficult conversations. I think this is the greatest one of all time, because a lot of times, that's the hardest thing to do sometimes as a manager, is to have a productive, okay? Now, when I say this,
Okay.
hear me clearly, is to have a productive conversation that's difficult with somebody who did not meet the expectation, because you got to go in there with the ability to be able to not demoralize that person, but lead them to a level of corporate maturity to where they understand what they have to do the next time that this happens. So they've got to be able to learn from this experience, but not walk away. They have to walk away going, okay, I missed it. Okay, but I also learned something from this and I grew from it. And my corporate maturity level rose because of this conversation. To me, that is what a great leader and a great manager will do, is he will get what he needs. Maybe it's the next time, okay? But he has that difficult conversation. But a lot of times, Darrell, we just fail to do it because, we don't want to hurt somebody's feelings, or we just don't know how to do it without scrutinizing and demoralizing that person in the process. And then, man, I mean, then you go from a unrealistic expectation to literally you've got someone doing their job, circling want ads all at the same time. Okay. So then I followed up there with all that, said was the best practices for managing expectations, clear communication, obviously. So be transparent about what can be achieved by when and what the resources they have to be able to use to do that. So give them everything that they need. Communicate clearly with them. Set SMART goals. Ensure expectations are specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound. Okay, if you'll do those things, it's hard for somebody to come back and go, I didn't know what was going on. That's one of the things that we practice in my business is those SMART goals, expectations. The third one was align on priorities. Ensure that everyone understands and agree on what matters the most. Not all expectations carry equal weight. Okay, so and I think that number 3 there, when I was writing that out, I was like, holy cow, man, I have people that miss that all the time, especially people at my level in my business. We have a different alignment of expectation, and you give someone who is not as corporately mature, and I use that word not to say that they're immature as a person, but if they don't have that stage, if you've been doing this business for 20 years, Darrell, you and I've talked. I mean, I'm 20 years older than you, but I'm probably a toddler, if not an infant, in the industry that we're working with right now with podcasts and everything else. I'm learning as we go. I'm an infant. I'm corporately immature in this area of expertise, where you are the senior adult in this expertise, and so we lean upon you. And so for you to go, hey Mike, give me the top 5 things that we need to do in this. I'm probably going to give you 5 things that are just absolutely stupid. And you're going to go, no, that's not right. So, being able to align the priorities and the expectations and clearly communicate that. For regularly check-ins, expectations can shift. Okay, as businesses shift, you know as well as I do. I mean, I'm sure yesterday morning you went to work and you had an agenda, and when you left that yesterday, Darrell, when you and I talked, that agenda had changed drastically. You and I were planning on, you and I were planning on getting together last night and doing a live, and man, I mean, the moment you started talking, I realized, man, this thing changed on the dime, and so we have to be able to pivot.
It did, yeah.
You have to be able to pivot, but the ongoing communication helps catch misalignments early. So you and I communicating, and we know each other well enough to where I go, hey, you know what, this is not going to be a good time, and so instead of pressuring you to go, oh well, instead of 8, can we do it at 9? That wasn't the conversation that needed to happen. It was, hey, let's put this off so you can get clarity, so you can get some other things. So, and I won't go down all these. Probably my favorite one here was the last one. It says managing the ups and downs. Managing expectations is not just for leaders. Team members must also communicate their limitations and clarify deliverabilities. So you've got to have an open communication with your team, Darrell, to the point where they trust. I trust that if something's going on in Darrell's life, okay, that's going to deviate the plan, that Darrell's going to tell me, so that, and trust that I'm going to have his best interest in mind. And I think that's probably the hardest thing that I do in business, because I change venues so much. And I may have 6 months from now, I may have a completely different team. I've got to start evaluating and building trust with that team so that they can trust coming to me and having those communications, having that communication outlet to where they know they trust that my expectation of them is reasonable and is obtainable, and I'm not going to scrutinize them for coming to me going, hey, I can't get to this right now. So then we have to find that root cause analysis, and then we may have to deviate. We may have to reevaluate the expectation and have that communication. I don't do a lot of things well, but I think what I really do is I communicate extremely well. I ask a lot of open-ended questions because I want to gather information on what level of maturity corporately that my people are, so that I can have a realistic expectation of what their outcome is going to be. It's definitely not going to be to my level. Darrell, I think you would be I think you're satisfied, and I'll just kind of use this as an example. I think you're satisfied with my level of expertise on us doing these podcasts.
Makes it really flexible.
I mean, I'm going to come on. I'm gonna click on the button as you tell me to click on, and But if you didn't, I mean, I wouldn't know to do that. So when you're evaluating your expectation of Mike, it's not to Darrell's expectation, because Darrell's a level 10 in our relationship. You're the 10, and I'm probably a 3. So if I'm maximizing that 3, you feel like, okay, Mike's doing everything he can do, and you feel good about that. But if your expectation of me was a 7, you would be frustrated with me all the time, and Morgan would be hearing about it every time we got off of this call. You know, but you follow what I'm saying there. So I mean, being able to evaluate that expectation helps you, and it helps me when I'm doing my people. It helps me understand where they're at, and then how to guide and lead them up to that.
This
next
is definitely
level.
a topic that you're not going to hear in church. I mean, maybe a small group. I mean, obviously this podcast, we want to touch a lot of things, but overall it needs to bring value to your lives. Those who are watching, those who are listening, if you like this content, make sure to hit the subscribe button over on YouTube so you can get notifications. Hit the bell as well, just so when we drop new episodes, or if I spend some other type of content, or if Michael has an awesome idea, which he had one yesterday. So would love to get some of that different type of content from you, Michael, and just post on the channel. But let's just touch one thing, and it's one of the two that you skipped over that can come off one way versus the other. And so we get about 3 or 4 minutes. So let's just kind of, I'm going to throw it out there. You just kind of speak some life into it, and then we'll bounce, so we can make sure, if you listen or watch this, that you can do it on a quick, easy drive or while you're working out. And so the two that you skipped over for best practices was regular check-ins. I think you kind of went over that, but you kind of brushed past it quickly. And then document agreements. Okay. Now this so you've got some detail with it: emails, contracts, project briefs, anything written. I think where leaders, especially young leaders that are trying to figure out, and like a young leader could be my age, like around like early 30s. Because like if you just now got into like that director type manager role, well, you've got a lot of things to kind of figure out. And so I've always found that document agreements, it could be Slack messages, could be Teams messages, could be Google it could be anything that's written in terms of accountability, because I tie accountability into efficiency. That like at the end of the day, I'm at a director level, and I've been here for a while now, and there's a reason why I'm at this level. I'm not the best out there by no means, right? I'm not the best creative director that a ministry, church, or anyone's ever seen. But I'm really efficient. And so, for me, I'm going to work nights. I'm going to work weekends. I'm going to do whatever it takes to actually get the team over the line, whatever that line looks like for any given week. But the bigger your team gets, and Michael, you right now manage a lot of people that manage a lot of other people. And so the bigger those get, accountability in terms of efficiency is huge. And the last thing you want is, if you weren't clear, right? So like if that's one area that like maybe you struggle in terms of expectations, is the communicational side, right? Well, one way to kind of save your tail
Yeah.
is to put it in writing. Right? Or if you're dealing with a third party
Yeah.
contractor, and like you've got clear guidelines written into a contract that if we have questions about what those are, we just go back to the document, right? We go back to whatever project management software that you're using within the organization or outside the organization. Like there's just a lot of channels of that point of document agreements to where, if I say I'm going to do something for XYZ within the ministry, or, it can even go down to like your relationship with your wife. Like she sends you a text. This happens to me all the time. And she runs her calendar off Apple Calendar, right? Just the calendar app in her phone. She doesn't use Google Calendar,
Yeah.
though she has a Gmail. And like I'm running paper calendar. She's got a paper calendar. I've got 3 or 4 like different calendars I'm working off of. But at the end of the day, she'll say, well, I texted that to you. Right. And it's the same thing with like your working and your careers, that like you've got to have those barriers to say, hey, I'm going back and we're going to look at this. No one's upset, but it was said back when. If you missed it or if I missed it, we have to work procedures into it. And then especially when you're having tough discussions, and I've had to do it a few times. I mean, everybody in leadership has to at some point. You got to let somebody go. Right. And so you need receipts.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
need documentation that was like, hey, here's clear expectations. Maybe I'm not the greatest communicator when it comes to laying those things out. But if you save your tail with this in the back end, and you do it in the beginning of taking a new gig, or practice it in your marriage, right? Like if your wife says something, just make a alarm notification to remind you to do it. Put it in your paper calendar, like whichever calendar you go to the most. It's all about accountability, because you can't be efficient in your marriage. You can't communicate well. You can't work well with others or lead others well if there's not clear communication guidelines where it's documented. So speaking of that, so then we can go ahead and wrap this up.
Yeah, I think I like the doc agreements, but you also said something to the number 4 regular check-ins. And I'm going to talk about it from a relationship standpoint, and hope that it ties into your professionalism as well too. How much better is my life when I'm communicating with my wife on a constant basis throughout the day. I think that kind of derives, how much better is my relationship with my team when I'm constantly communicating with them throughout the day. If they just heard from me once a day and that time was not a good conversation, I don't want them. I don't want when they see my name for it to register, oh my God, something bad's happening. That's right. And same with my wife. I don't want, I want to constantly communicate throughout the day. Darrell, I've lived in a non-tech savvy world. I know what it's like to, have to call on a landline and go, hey, Nina, hey, how you doing? I love you, and you maybe get to do that once a day, if that. And otherwise, you see her at 5 o'clock in the afternoon. Now we have the technology where I can, we send the emoji, or we send the, hey, love you, real quick, thing out. And so it's a constant thing throughout the day. I'm peppering her with accolades. I'm peppering her with, hey, proud of you. Hey, proud of you. Proud. That goes on for days on end. And then when something happens, it's, the communication has been there. It's not just, hey, you just communicate with me when the crap's hitting the fan. No, that's not the case. So I rarely do I have those conversations anymore. So I think that regular check-in, and if you tie that to doc agreement, because I think a doc agreement is a written documentation. Every time I'm sending my wife a documentation going, I love you, I'm planting a seed of, hey, I'm not just a person going, hey, don't spend this, don't spend that. Hey, we can't go this. No, we're not eating out. It's not a mic driven relationship. It has now become a relationship to where she sees my name, or my employee sees my name, and it's like, man, I'm gonna check on that because Mike's gonna send me good stuff. Mike's gonna pat me on the back. He's gonna be a great cheerleader, but he's also gonna be that guy that's going to go, hey, we need to look at some game film here. and he's going to get real with me if he needs to get real with me. And then that expectation, Darrell, when that happens, is a whole lot easier conversation if you've been that cheerleader consistently and being authentic about it as well too. But no, I love that. I love the doc agreement. I mean, I think about that every time you and I have a conversation and you telling me about adventures in your life and the things that are going on, and just the stuff that, and it all relates, because I feel it too. Is, would I ever take a job ever if they didn't send me an agreement going, here's what we're going to pay you, here's what we owe you, here's all the benefits that come along with it? Heck no, we wouldn't do that, because we want the assurance. We want the paperwork to go, if it doesn't happen, to go, hey, this is what you told me, and this was the expectation that I had. So that in business falls in the same thing with life too, as we deal with our relationships, Darrell, as well as I do. And we fail miserably sometimes. I'm sitting there telling you this right now, and I'm thinking, man, have I sent Nina anything today saying, nope, hey babe, I'm proud of you.
Go
hey,
ahead
I love
and do
you.
it now.
But that's but that's the authenticity. That's right. That's the authenticity. As soon as we get off of here, I can promise you I will. But that's the authenticity that we have to be able to have, in the transparency of being able to go, hey, you know what, man? I may speak into the life of going, hey, this is what needs to happen. But a lot of times, but I'm not going to let the expectation that that's what I need to do. And if I don't do it, I've learned that I can't let that go. Well, Mike, you're just a failure. You're a bad husband. I'm like, now I'm at the point, I'm just like, I missed it. Let me get it right and don't miss it in the bar, and then move on with life a little bit.
Honesty and transparency. Well, we sure hope that this episode of the things that we don't talk about at church has brought you some value, as at least a little bit of entertainment, and maybe some education in terms of just some practical steps that you can take with your marriage, with your finances, with your career, just with life in general. And then, we didn't talk about it much, but expectations for a local church. I think that's something we can get into in another episode, Michael, because I mean, that is probably more in the vein of this podcast of okay, I found a place, we've been attending for a month or two, and buddy, it's not really hitting certain expectations I had in the very beginning when we were visiting.
That's so good.
So, but let's save that. If this podcast, if this episode has helped you any, make sure to hit the subscribe button, leave a comment, let us know any topics, anything that you have in the future that maybe you want us to talk about, either from my perspective, Michael's perspective, or just kind of collectively. Drop a comment down. Also hit a like. Help us out. We're trying to create more content consistently, and we just want to make sure that it's providing value to your life today. All right, it's going to do it for this episode of Things We Don't Talk About in Church. We'll see you next time.